Hello, Beat Baseball World. Welcome back to another episode of the Beat Ball Blues Show. Show that I've mentioned was coming for a while. Even though I've been looking forward to. It's not going to be an easy show. We're leaving Beat Ball on the sidelines today. The sport may get mentioned a little tiny bit. But this one's about life. Anybody that's been tracking the show long enough knows that at times I like to deal with life and give the game a break a little bit, and that's what this episode's going to be about. I'll tell you more about where we're going and what we're doing, but first I would like to bring in this wonderful panel of people that have taken time to do this show with me, starting with a man who's making his third appearance on the show, which is darn near qualifying him for a new co-host. Might be moving Bam Bam out of the way. But my dude for the San Antonio Jets is back again, Mr. David Smith. What up, D. Smith?
What's going on, Neil? Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. Appreciate you being here. We're going to get back to you in a minute since you are the one that started this whole mess. I'm also going to bring in a longtime friend of mine who's got stories, I guess, similar to David's that are going to be relevant to what we're doing today. My friend Tracy Sinkovic. Welcome, Trace.
Hey, what's going on?
Sorry, I forgot to mute my phone, apparently. Something's talking. My phone, I forgot that I unmuted it when we lost David. All of a sudden, my phone started talking. It's like, oh, man, what messed that up? But hello, Tracy. How are you today? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You sound so reserved. I catch you at a bad time. You need a minute?
Who, me?
Hello?
No, that's not me. That's not me. I think that was that Michelle?
No.
Oh, I heard a door open, but that was definitely not me. I'm good.
Just all right. And then also, and we'll get back to Tracy in a minute. We'll explain. Yeah, this off to a great start. But we'll get back to you in a minute, Tracy. I'll explain more about how I've gotten to know you and what you are doing here with us. I'm now going to bring in Michelle Godwin. Michelle is a licensed clinical social worker. She is a therapist who specializes in trauma, and trauma is more or less what we're going to be talking about in every shape, size, and form today. Michelle, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for helping us out today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So since we're going to be talking about trauma, this show, the idea of this show got started back when David was on the first time back in June with some of his teammates. After the show was done, David had mentioned to me that he was in therapy for PTSD, and I'm pro mental health, and I'm proud, especially in the sports world, when people who are open and honest about being in treatment for mental health issues. There are a couple that come to mind, DeMar DeRozan of the San Antonio Spurs and Kevin Love of the Cleveland Cavaliers, both professional basketball players. Both have been all-stars, so they're players that are high in their game. And they have each been in treatment for mental health issues. And I love it when people like that share that, I think it's good for people to hear. And that's why I got inspired when David was so open about it. I thought it would be good for our people in the beat baseball world to hear. And that's basically where this show is going. So Michelle, I would like you to talk about yourself, your career, what you do, and get us started on our whole trauma talk.
Okay. Like you said, I'm a clinical social worker. I've been in the field officially for about 16 years. I currently work for a small nonprofit in Placerville, California, as a therapist and a clinical director at New Morning Youth and Family Services. I have worked with different populations through the year. I've worked with senior citizens, with people with different disabilities, with homeless youth, homeless women and children, and transitional living, and with people with addictions and addictions facilities. And so I guess that's a good way to start talking about trauma, is that it is something that it doesn't discriminate. It is inevitable in any social system that we live in. It affects the rich, the poor, the famous, the underdogs. It's obviously there's certain things that certain areas of life, like war-torn areas and things like that it can even be bigger, but it doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, I with this episode, when I've thought about like writing the description, I believe this particular show is something that every single person that comes across the link should at least check out a little bit, because I think it's something that everybody can relate to somehow.
Right.
Not that everybody has experienced trauma per se,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody knows somebody that has, or if they haven't themselves, they
Mm-hmm.
know somebody they have. There's somebody that's in their life that they care about that's experienced trauma, because like you said, it doesn't discriminate. It gets everybody.
Right. And it's the longer we live, the more inevitable it is that we're going to experience something, times of high stress or certain events. So it's inevitable.
So is this a place where you would like to talk about the different types of trauma?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's good to kind of start talking about maybe the definition of trauma.
Okay.
It is, I like to explain to people that trauma isn't something that happens. It is our response to what happens. So it is a response that's, deeply distressing or disturbing to an event or a cluster of events that overwhelms a person's ability to cope, basically.
Okay.
It can cause feelings of, emotional dysregulation. It gives you a sense of helplessness, confusion, loss. So I think it's just clear. It's good to clear that up. Certainly, it diminishes your sense of self-worth, and brings in, the ability, your ability to not be able to regulate emotions and want to numb that out or act on it. So, you were asking about different kinds of traumas. There is little T's. We like to call them little T's, which is basically clusters of stressful experiences. It could be something like messages growing up that you are not worth it. It could be, mental messages. It could be bullying. It could be a high stress situation like a divorce or infidelity. It could be any, number one of those things.
It's kind of scary that those are being called little T's, because a lot of
Right.
those things sound big already. So
Right.
it's a little bit misleading.
Right. It's basically your sense of safety is threatened. The other thing we talk about is big T's or large T's, and those are the things we think of when we think of trauma. I think in general, they were talking about sexual assault, war effects, being attacked, severe car accidents, things like that. And so they can be little events clustered up to create a pattern, or those huge events. And again, when we talk about trauma, talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, not everybody gets post-traumatic stress disorder. It's when your system is not able to process disturbing experiences, and it hangs on, or it might show up later. And one of the key things that distinguishes post-traumatic stress disorder from other trauma disorders is the nightmares is a big thing. I mean, there's a whole bunch of criteria that you could, a checklist you could go down, but that's in particularly one of the long-lasting things. So it's what else would you guys like to know about trauma?
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on, just from you talking about the big T's, and this is where it kind of comes in for me, and thinking that I think a lot of our beat baseball players would benefit by hearing this episode, is because so many, like, one thing that makes our game different, or blind sports different, or even I'll take that further to like Paralympian sports of any kind, different than any other kind of sport, is the fact that the individuals participating in those sports, I don't know what the numbers are, but I bet like half of them or better are there because of a traumatic accident or event of some sort. And going just to our own sport of beat baseball, we have players who have lost their eyesight to gunshot wounds. I was in a boat that was pulling another boat, and the chain, well, there was a rope and a chain. The rope broke and the chain came back and hit me in my face. We've had car accidents. There's a player who was thrown from a bull. He used to be a bull rider when he could see. He's thrown from a bull and got stomped by the bull. Like, there's so much trauma that has led to us having the sport of beat baseball. Right. So to me, it's so relatable, like for my target audience, I guess.
Yeah. Right. And people are so busy dealing with the physical disability that comes up from accidents, that they often don't get to approach or deal with the mental part of it. And I'd like to also explain that trauma is, with all the new research, we know now that it is not just in your head. It's not just in your mind. It's part of your body. And mental, a lot of people don't understand, oh, it's just your thoughts. Well, your thoughts are from your brain and your beliefs, but it's stored in the middle part of your brain, where the fight, flight, freeze section of your brain. And if it doesn't get processed correctly, it can be stored in there, and you deal with a lot of physical issues from from not processing what's happened, and then it
Yeah.
develops a lot of disturbing beliefs and things.
And plus our brain is what regulates our body. And if there's something in our brain that is affecting us in a severe way, it's going to have a trickle down effect.
Right.
There's just no way around it.
Right.
One thing I'd like you to talk a little bit about before we bring David back and get going with him is you shared with me, as you just mentioned, PTSD, and both of our guests, Tracy and David, are people who have been diagnosed with PTSD, and it's something they have to deal with in their everyday life.
Right.
You had shared with me that newer research is showing, you're getting a lot of results indicating that people who experienced a lot as children may be more susceptible to PTSD. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So years ago, Kaiser actually developed a study, and it's called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. And what we've done several versions of that since, with lots of research to back it up time and time again. And what that shows us is that people who experience traumas or disturbing experiences in early childhood have less resilience to rebound when things happen in life. So, children who don't have a good attachment style with a parent, they don't grow up with that nurturing, loving, soothing experience, especially as infants. That is one of the key factors in relational trauma. Kids, we know a lot about birth trauma and pregnancy trauma, and that's effects on people later in life. Not to mention, to talk about, again, the blindness community. There's a lot of people who are blind from being preemies, or other things like that, and they're in incubators for so long. And nowadays, thank goodness, the medical field knows that they have to have touch. So somebody will sit there with a finger touching this little tiny preemie, to just be able to have that touch. But think about it. A normal kid is being swaddled and laying on mama's chest and skin to skin contact. And if you take a preemie, which thank God they have the technology, right? But that's a prerequisite for not having the resilience. So back to ACEs, the more disturbing things you see or experience in early childhood definitely sets you up for less resilience. So they've connected that. They found that out with a lot of veterans. People, why do some veterans go to war and some come back and they have adjustment issues, they have issues, but that doesn't carry over into actual PTSD. How is that? And they linked it to early childhood and the growing up and all of that. Plus, then we were able to find out that the more they went back to war, if somebody does, they might be okay after one tour of duty, but if somebody comes back after their third tour of duty, it just builds up.
Yeah, so, the repeated, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, if they experience, physical trauma or traumatic brain injuries are huge linked with mental health. Especially PTSD. So yes, what you experience in early childhood, particularly as babies, but definitely, before that age of 10, whether it's illness, medical issues, abusive, witnessing domestic violence, or whatever the disturbing thing is. It definitely has, it can affect your ability to build up resistance, I guess, resilience. Yeah. So, and again, and we later on when we get into treatments, I can talk about the relationship of resilience, and that's part of dealing with it.
One part of that because I remember when you first shared this newer research with me that got my attention, and I'd like to just point it out to the audience that, again, it's not necessarily that they experience violence themselves as children per se, but just the fact that they may have witnessed it or witnessed heavy things.
Yes.
Man. All right. Well, David, I'd like to bring you back to the forefront. And this all started because you feel pretty strongly that you could help some of our family members in our sport and in our blind community by hearing your story and what you've been through. So I'll let you tell it as it's important to you.
All right, thank you. So I'm like terrified right now. I'll be honest with you.
No, it's all right. Take your time. Take as long as you want. You know what I mean? Don't.
But I know we're gonna save somebody's life. Honestly, I really do feel that. So let's do it.
Yes, sir.
So I grew up with a alcoholic, abusive mother, single mom, and she was a drug dealer, drug addict. And she was just like extremely abusive. She hit and kicked and jabbed you in the face with keys, and she hit like a man. I just remember she hit so hard that you just saw the flash of light in your eyes, like when you got hit in the head really hard. I remember that a lot. That's what led me to treatment was that, and I've been going to treatment since February of this year, so it's fairly recent.
Okay.
And I was 37 when I started, so I've been kind of dealing with this my whole life and not realizing what it was. What led me to treatment was a couple things. The past couple of years, I watch the news a lot, and I look at social media, and it's just been getting crazy, with mass shootings and but I didn't realize what I was doing was just continuously triggering myself, So I felt like I was losing on my ability to maintain emotional stability by seeing all this crazy stuff going on and reading all this crazy stuff, and especially when it came to like mass shootings and kids were involved. And so then one thing kind of led to another. I found beat ball around that time in 2017. It helped a little bit. It kind of helped a little bit, but I still didn't have like my coping mechanisms that I've been using my whole life were not working anymore. So
you needed to learn some new tools.
Exactly right. So what happened was in December of last year, my cousin unexpectedly committed suicide about a couple of weeks before Christmas. And that, I don't know, what bothered me the most about that was I didn't feel anything. And I couldn't feel it, and I wanted to, and I couldn't. And it just blew my mind that, I had good memories of me and my cousin. And it blew my mind that one day we're a smiling, happy kid playing, doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then next day, the next thing you know, you're hanging from a rope, And so the fact that I couldn't feel was bothering me. And I was like, what, that could be me,
Right.
And so I was like, and me and my wife have been talking about it, and so that's what got me to start treatment. And I didn't start till a few months later, but that's what got me to treatment, because I just kind of felt like what I'm doing isn't going to work anymore much longer, before I just shut everybody out of my life and just, you know, or maybe, you know, you never know, hanging from a rope one day, you just never know.
If I could just interrupt for a second, because I'd like to ask Michelle. I'm so impressed by the fact, like, you were so self-absorbed, like self-observant. Like I'm not probably saying that right, but the fact, Michelle, to me, that he was looking at himself and saying, "Man, this doesn't feel right to me." Is that normal? That seems really strong to me.
It's great, and that's when somebody's ready to work on themselves. You know, I liked what you said, David, regarding you coped, right? You functioned. You maybe it wasn't healthy, but it worked for you. Maybe some things were healthy and it worked for you, but it gets to the point because you got older, you saw more mass shootings, you saw more on TV, more on social media, and so I mean that's inevitable, right? And then you started noticing, gosh, things are getting worse, and you're trying to cope the same way you always coped, and you're like, ugh, it's not working. And then you hit this big event, right? A huge loss, and you didn't feel anything, and you were like, wow, I'm close to that. I'm close to that. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of your story. But usually, Neil, you know, I see people, they come to maybe what's their rock bottom, and hopefully they reach out at that point, or before that point would be great, but at that point and get some help. But yeah, you know, sounds like he was getting ready.
Right.
So and you know, I loved my cousin, so it kind of freaked me out that I had no feelings towards it, you know. And I went after the cops left, because we got the phone call, we rushed to the house, and you know, he's just hanging there for hours while the cops, I don't know what they're trying to figure out, like what's there to figure out? The dude killed himself, you know. But we're all outside waiting in the yard while he's just hanging there. And the sick side of me was like, I want to know what he saw, what his last vision was. And so finally they all left, and we were all in the house, kind of just there with, you know, the family, and I went in there without nobody noticing, and it was the deepest, darkest, I don't even know how to explain it. It just it freaked me the hell out. Like I was like, this is evil, man. Whatever happened here was evil. And it wasn't my cousin's fault, you know. And there's a lot of details that came up that, you know, helps make more sense of it all, but it just freaked me out that we were laughing, you know, one day in your life, and the next thing you know, you're not here no more over some I don't know over what, but it just freaked me out. So as far as my trauma, relating to my trauma, you know, I grew up, you know, I didn't get that nurturing. I didn't get that I love you sign. I didn't get that anything. I got, you know, beat up, you know what I mean? Like,
It's complete, you know, opposite.
Right. When I got older, I always thought maybe it just happened because maybe she was loving and then she turned into that. But then I find out it was always like that, even when I was in the pamper, you know. She was a single mom, so I'm kind of understanding that maybe she was frustrated, or maybe she left me at home by myself to fend for myself because she didn't have nobody to watch me or whatever. But you don't know that as a kid. So, you know, the crazy thing is that when you're a kid and you're getting punched and you're getting, you know, just you feel the anger off this other person towards you, you don't really like understand it. You don't really take it personal. I still love my mom. I was a mama's boy. I remember always telling my mom, I remember always saying I love you and making sure that she said it back. I would keep saying it until she said it back. You know, so and all along, you know, she's doing what she's doing, but I don't take it personal. But as you get older, you start to try to figure things out. And the problem was I was exposed to environments that caused emotions that my brain wasn't ready to handle. She was a drunk driver. So I remember she's driving back home and she turns the headlights off because I guess the car was like dying. So she's literally driving in the country, pitch black, swerving on the road, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna die. We're gonna die, dude.
Oh my God.
Like we were about to hit a curve that I remember was just cliffs, and I'm like, we're gonna die. We're dying. So I remember being convinced that I was gonna die, and I remember accepting that, and I remember closing my eyes in the back seat, thinking, all right, let's go, you know. So, and that's a kid trying to process all that.
Yeah, no, that's heavy. That's
Not
so
only that,
heavy.
she was a drug dealer, and so people outside with guns wanting to come inside my house. And I'm just trying to go to school to the bus stop, you know. Like I had to. So I think my trauma stems from experiencing all these emotions of death, sorrow. I'm gonna die, you know, too young, and so my whole life has been spent doing whatever I could do to avoid anything that might make me feel like that, you know. So you take, and so what ends up happening is you take these little things, and you might it's a trigger, and that's the thing about PTSD is you have to find your trigger so that you can be ready for them, you know. And when you don't know that, because you don't know what's going on, you just don't have no idea what you're walking into.
Yeah. You're just
trying to adapt. And you know, I had a little brother, and she did the same to him. And I mean, it was this craziness. And as you get older, and the boy starts to become a teenager, you start having hormones and all this stuff, and you start taking it personal. You know, why doesn't this lady that gave birth to me, why does she hit me? Why does she hate me? Why does she call me a piece of shit? Why does she say you're a worthless piece of shit almost on a daily basis? Why does she say, I wish you would have died like instead of your twin brother? You know,
oh my God.
when we were born, I was an identical twin, and he died. So, but what got me through that was, you know, you said earlier you were talking about resilience.
Yeah.
I get the whole, it takes me a little time to rebound from something crazy. But man, there was a half of me that was terrified of stuff, but there's the other half of me that says, man, screw that.
Right.
I'm not gonna let that beat me, you know, like hell no. So that other side of me has always been the thing that got me through. The problem is that when I became a teenager and I started taking things personal from my mom, I started contemplating dying. Like, what else is there? If this is how it's gonna be, and I'm gonna feel sorrow and pain and hurt all the time, once you get older, you start realizing that is an option, you know. And you start thinking about it. But I was like, heck no, I'm not going out like. I've always been like, I'm not going out like that. I'm supposed to do something amazing on this world. I don't know what it is, but that feeling of that I'm supposed to do something amazing in this world has kept me going. And the problem is that my coping mechanism, the biggest one that I used was, as soon as you did something, maybe you said something, you know, and I'm legally blind, so I always hear how your tone of voice is, and what they cause problems because you might have a certain tone that triggered me, and now I'm gonna push you away because you might cause pain to me. Now it's a protective mechanism, you know, and I will push you away by any means necessary, you know. So,
well, you grew up definitely with that sense of hypervigilance.
right.
Your life has started in that you're always on edge, always scanning the situations, always. And so the minute somebody's like anything that might cause you to be uncomfortable, you probably ran.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, you know, I would find a way out, just like I was contemplating trying to find a way out of this earlier today. So, I mean, you always try to find a way out, you know. I mean, but you know, it's that hyper, like, man, I can remember my mom would be at the bars all the time, and I knew what time she got home. And man, around that time, it could be 2 or 3 in the morning. My heart would just be pounding, and I would hear her pull in, and my heart would just be pounding. Like I thought maybe my heart was gonna explode, you know. And because I didn't know what was gonna happen when she walked in, I was either gonna, you know, beat the shit out of for nothing, or maybe she might try to sleep with me again, you know, like it was just craziness. And I started having these feelings like of doom, of numbness, of sorrow, suffer, all, and at a young age, too young, you know. No kid should ever have to figure out how to deal with that, you know.
No.
So
no, I mean, what trips me out about that is like, for for, I think, a normal kid to be home alone at 1 o'clock in the morning, like you would normally be waiting, like, and not wanting to be alone, like, can't wait till my parent gets back. But you're like in the opposite situation, like that was the scary part for you, is her coming back.
Her coming back when she was gone, I was like, whew, okay, I got a few hours.
Yeah.
I don't have to be so on and everything, you know, I don't have to worry about for a few hours. But then when that time kind of, so when I went to the school for the blind during the summer, that was my vacation, man. I mean, you know what I mean? Dude, you know, now I don't think anybody that I've been to school with before knows that. But
David, what led you to getting help at age 37? You said, right?
Yeah, well, it was a fact. Like I said, as I said earlier, it was
the situation with your cousin, right? Wasn't that
right? I just realized I started becoming numb to things that I shouldn't be numb to. You know, so it just told me a lot about myself. It told me that I wasn't really connecting. Like when I was a kid, man, I loved everybody, you know, and I wanted to care about everybody else. And it's kind of like that. I kind of did that to make me feel better because of what I was going through, you know?
Did you seek out a therapist on your own, or did like your wife or somebody close to you recommend getting some help? How did it transpire?
Well, I mean, so my cousin was kind of like the tip of the iceberg, but it had been kind of building up a little bit. My wife, you know, my poor wife, man. I mean, you know, I became super critical of women, you know, not that I hate women or anything. Like, I love women, but as soon as you showed me that you cared about me, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to fall in love with somebody, but what I didn't anticipate was that once they did, and I knew it, it was like, oh shit, you know, it was like, you know, like now she could hurt me, you know, like now
you're vulnerable.
Now I'm vulnerable. Now I'm in love, and now what if you know, she makes me feel like my mother made me feel, you know. And I didn't. And so the problem was, to prevent that, I reserved myself. I put a wall up to protect not only me, but them too. Like, I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. You know, I don't want to hurt my wife's feelings. I don't want to push her away. But I realized when she got too close, I would push her away by saying mean things or just being frustrated or whatever. And I didn't realize that. I was like, golly, like, I don't want to be critical of people, but that's how I was treated when I grew up. So I was criticized all the time. People, you know, my mother was very critical. Pretty much, if you didn't stay out of her way, you know, some shit was gonna happen. So it was like, you know,
and that was really the only, like, that was the only thing you had to fall back on as far as relationships, like between you, like, you know what I mean, between you and another female, I guess.
Right, and then it wasn't, and that's not what I wanted. That's not who I am. Like, you know, this PTSD side of me is completely opposite of what I really am, and so it sucks because my whole 20s and half my 30s, I wasn't able to be who I really want to be. But I just didn't know it's because of PTSD. You know what I mean? I always was like,
I do. I think it goes to what Michelle talked about, like it being in your body. You know what I mean?
Can I read something real quick?
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because somebody, I'll say his name. His name's Larry Crusoe, is a friend of mine on Facebook. He posted this the other day, and I just thought it was perfect, but I just want to read it. It says,
sure.
It says, let me zoom in. Let me blow this up. It says, trauma affects the entire human organism, body, mind, and brain. In PTSD, the body continues to defend against a threat that belongs in the past. Healing from PTSD means being able to terminate discontinued stress mobilization and restore the entire organism to safety. So you're always trying to protect yourself from the feelings, not things that happen, but from the feelings that you were traumatized with growing up, you know? So, and whatever you got to do to prevent that, whether it's food, man, I'm a binge eater, you know. Well, I'm better at it now, but I'm a binge eater, you know. Sometimes I'm very critical of myself, very, like, I'm never going to be good enough, and that's just the way it's going to be. And that's how I approach religion. That's how I approach God. You know, I believe in God, but I'll never be good enough. That's how my brain works, you know, but I'm not supposed to be good enough. I realize that now. So,
I'm really glad you shared that post, because that sums it up so well. And a couple of things keep popping in my mind as you're speaking, and that is, you know, for healing trauma, from trauma, there has to be a sense of safety and connection, and you have to learn to manage your emotions, right? Because it comes from losing that sense of safety, losing a sense of connection, and total dysregulation. So it really sounds like those were key in helping you on your journey.
Yeah, right. I'm glad you brought that up. So the therapy helped me understand my triggers. Well, it kind of helped me understand what was going on. Like, I didn't realize that emotions, feelings create thoughts, and vice versa. Thoughts create emotion. So what happens is, as soon as I felt something that I wasn't able to handle, just a little speck of it didn't have to be a full blown. It could just be like a little taste of it, like, oh shit, you know. Then that created emotion, and then that emotion in turn created a negative thought, and then that negative thought amplifies that emotion, and then you just go back and forth until you're hitting a pipe or something. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'd like to add that you probably are feeling the physical sensations, that sense of panic.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to internalize it because I don't want nobody around me to see what's going on.
Right.
And so, you know, I was gonna say something. It'll come back to me. but yeah, because my mind's everywhere.
No, you're good. One thing. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. I remember that.
We're also polite. Go ahead.
Another thing that scared me was that, and I don't want to, like, I'm gonna be raw right now. I'm gonna be open. It scared me that when I was younger, and I didn't know it was really PTSD was or anything. Once my mom left me, she had to leave town because she messed up with drugs and, you know, whatever. I don't know the story, trying to kill her or kill us or whatever. She had to leave town, and she left town when I was 15. Okay, and at first I was like, holy, thank you, God, you know. I don't have to get beat up anymore. It is my brother or whatever. But what I didn't, and I thought it was done. I thought, I'm done. My life, I'm good now. You know, like, I don't have to worry. And so the people that took me in, they kind of offered me to get therapy. And I was too happy. I was like, no, I don't need therapy. I'm good because I'm not scared no more.
Everything's all fixed.
Right, but really what happened was, I went from one extreme to the next extreme because they were a good home. And I never saw that. So, and I thought that was good, but it turned out going from one extreme to the next kind of.
It was probably hard for you to adjust because it was so different.
Well, yeah, I did have.
Even if it was a better environment, I would assume it was hard for you to adapt to it because it's so different from what you're used to.
I got so close to the female in that my bus driver, and I called her. I started calling her mom. Started calling them dad. Like, I was so happy. But then I can't even describe it. You know, I just couldn't trust them the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I would either trust them one day and then not trust them the next day. It was like back and forth. And I was like, what in the hell is going on? Like,
well, you're 15 and you haven't been taught to trust yet. Is it?
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. And so, you know, I just, a lot of this whole disorder is anxiety based, I think. It starts with anxiety, and, you know, it's bad when I was young, I remember somebody saying, I'm gonna kill you. And I said, oh yeah. And, you know, people say dumb things, right? We know that now, right? I realize that now. But at the time, that triggered me because I've been told that my mother said, I'll take you out. I brought you and I'll take you out. And I've seen her do some very horrible things to other people. And that terrified me. And so when somebody told me that, I found myself at home planning on how to take this guy out before he took me out. you know, and that's scary because the good thing about this good thing I have the other side of me that's logical, you know, because I'm like, why am I planning on, you know, let's be real, killing somebody, you know, why am I doing that? You know, even though he said what he said, that's just craziness. So I would, thank God I'm logical, and I would be like, nah, that's crazy, but it bothered me. I didn't know why I thought like that. So my whole life, I'm like, I'm not normal. There's something wrong with me. I don't deserve to be with anybody. I don't need to be around anybody for their safety and my safety, you know, and not realizing this whole time that I'm dealing with this PTSD thing. So now that I've been through treatment, I can pinpoint I can anticipate triggers so that I can plan ahead, right? And not just
protect yourself.
Because the problem is protecting yourself is reactive most of the time, right? You know, and so that's what I became. I became this reactive person, you know, and you feel this one thing, you react by saying something or doing something. You feel this other thing that you don't like, you react by saying something or doing something. And now that I'm through treatment, I don't react anymore. I try not to I'm better at thinking about it. Okay, this is a trigger. This is why I'm feeling this. This is why I'm thinking this. All right, let me throw in some positive thoughts into this negative cycle, because just because you get therapy doesn't mean the cycle ends right away.
Right.
You know, it's like,
I think what the key is
chip on it from the outside by positive thoughts that you can create, because you know, what I didn't realize was that thoughts aren't, you know, they just come sometimes. It's not you, you know, intrusive thoughts, you know.
Yeah.
And you're like, where'd this come from? Like, why am I thinking this? You know, and so once you understand that and you accept that that's what could happen, you can better prepare yourself for when it does happen, what you're gonna do to change that or combat it. And so I do have to take time to myself sometimes when I've encountered a trigger, and I need to take time away by myself and just fight this battle in my head. Sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 hours. It just depends on what triggered me. And so, but I find myself chipping away at this and not allowing myself to react. So that's what therapy has really done. So, you know, finding your sticking points, you know, sticking points are those, because you create these beliefs over time. You know, one belief I created was, if there's alcohol involved, something bad's going to happen. You know? So I'm trying to just have a good time with my family, and I can't. As soon as I see somebody that I care about, their demeanor change, their personality change because of alcohol, right away that was a trigger, you know.
Yeah.
So, and it's because I had the sticking point of alcohol bad, alcohol trauma, alcohol this, that, whatever. And so I've been taking time, you know, me and my wife are gonna have a couple of drinks with family friends, and the whole week I'm like, how do I get out of this, you know?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, all right. I just need to understand. I had to fight it. I can't avoid it, right? I don't want to avoid anything anymore. So I'm trying to like use my therapy skills that I've learned and minimize the anxiety that's building. You know, knowing that I'm going to be around alcohol later. So yeah, just a little.
Thank you for sharing.
And you know, part I want to highlight from that, and it goes back to a conversation you and I had privately, David, is like all of this, like what you told me you've gained most from therapy is learning the tools to deal with all this stuff. Like all these things you're sharing with us about how you now approach stuff and now how you prepare yourself ahead of time, all are tools that you learned in therapy, right?
Right, yeah. So there's a therapy, you can kind of think, I'm a fitness guy, so therapy, you can kind of think of fitness for your brain, right? You learn you learn these different exercises for your cognitive training, right? Cognitive thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know if I have, through the therapy and training, I know if I have an intrusive thought, number one, I'm gonna recognize that it's an intrusive thought. I'm not gonna ignore it, right? Okay, I'm having this crazy thought. Number one, that's normal because of what I've been through, right? It's not that I'm not normal or I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna. So number one, I tell myself, all right, that's normal for what I've been through. Number two, all right, what's something positive that I can think of right now that's gonna counteract that negative thought, right? But the thing is, you can't do that unless you accept that okay, I have an intrusive thought and it's making me feel a certain way. You got to accept that and say, okay, and recognize it, and then say, all right, it's literally just a battle, man. Literally, it's a battle.
I'm sure.
Of you against this PTSD. And so the thing is you can't ignore it, you can't avoid it. You have to face it. You have to so that's why I say when you have an intrusive thought, instead of going to smoke a bowl or have a drink because it made me feel a certain way, I'm gonna say, all right, I hear you. Not hear you, no voice, not a voice. But I know you're there. I know why you're there, and this is what I'm gonna do about it. And it's gonna be a healthy way. So when you bring, somebody brought up exercise earlier. Exercise is my medicine. I had to take it daily, okay?
Yeah.
Because of this. So because it's gonna release some neurotransmitters that's gonna help me deal with that kind of stuff, right? So so exercise is medicine. Healthy nutrition is my medicine. I gotta take daily, and I know that now, and it's helped tremendously minimize the anxiety so that I can respond in a healthy way. So I hope I didn't go everywhere. I know I was everywhere, but I hope.
No,
Great.
you're good.
Great.
You're good. You're very brave and strong, and I appreciate you sharing all that. I actually would like you to touch on your new tool that you're going to be working on. I saw your post on Facebook that you have a dog that's going to be starting getting trained for you to be a service animal for you.
Yeah, so we had a couple months ago, or a few months ago, I had a therapy appointment, and we were talking about a service dog, and the next day we were with a couple friend, and their next door neighbor had a dog that they didn't want him when he was about 8 weeks old. It was it looked like a lab shepherd mix, but I just felt right away that this is the dog, this is the one that's supposed to be with me.
You felt a connection. I
felt the connection right away. So I took him and I started trying to Google, researching around, how do I get this guy trained to be a service dog? At first I thought about a CNI dog, so I looked into that, and it turns out they have their own breeding pool, they have their own stuff.
Yeah.
They don't take outside dogs. And
right.
Then my therapist was like, well, just try the PTSD route, And so I saw a news clip about a place that does that. And I reached out to him, and they're a place that really just does it for veterans. But I reached out to him saying, hey, I'm legally blind, I have PTSD. I have this puppy who's the two most common breeds that y'all guys work with. And I know I'm not a veteran, but where can I go to get this guy trained? Or can I even get him trained? And they're like, yeah. And so a lady reached out to me, and she met me and met the dog and was like, yeah, I want to train this guy. I want to train your dog for free to be your PTSD service dog. So
wow.
We just started that, and it's going to be amazing. I already know. So
that's a gift. Wow.
Yeah, it's a blessing for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. But I like that. Now, I had a guy I used to play b-ball with. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But I had a guy that, when I first started playing b-ball, he had a dog named Simba. So when I saw the name, that guy gave me a smile in two different ways. So
yeah, and with dogs, I've always been like, I've always been emotionally connected to dogs the way I couldn't be emotionally connected with humans. And even my wife was upset with me one time because she's like, "You're treating a dog better than you treat me," and I'm like, not better than the way I treat her, but I showed the dog more affection than I was showing her.
I honestly, my laughter came more from the number of times I've been accused of that, because I don't currently have a dog, but I've had dogs my entire life. My last dog passed about 1.5 years ago, and I haven't replaced it yet. And this literally 1.5 years is the longest stretch I've gone in my life without having a dog. And but like people like Seth, Tracy probably used to. When I haven't even gotten into this yet, but Tracy and I used to date. I'm sure she accused me of treating my dogs better. It's just something that's been thrown my way. So I can relate to what you said. I mean, one of the reasons I've always had dogs, because I just have a comfortable relationship with them. So is that your dog I hear panting right there? I hear something. Maybe it's not. I guess not. So, all right, we'll move on. before we bring Tracy in and go down her path, either David or Michelle, do you have anything to add on to that segment?
Well, I'd like to hear Tracy's story and kind of see where, you know, I'm sure there's similar themes. Maybe the circumstances are different, but, you know, definitely I'm seeing themes. And one thing that maybe later on we can get into, because I know Tracy has a daughter, but, you know, I'd like to point out is that, you know, when we see cycles of abuse, like child abuse, like what David experienced,
Right.
you know, I would bet money I do not have that his mom was abused herself.
I was thinking that earlier too.
And she was, and
Yeah.
that's what kind of helped the whole forgiveness thing, was that, man, I realized she wasn't treated good either. And so it's just unfortunate that for some reason she wasn't offered the help or didn't accept the help or whatever.
And turned to drugs and alcohol to cope.
And she still does that. You know, I've tried to reconnect with her, and she just, because I turned out completely opposite than her, she just kind of hates my guts. So she's not at a place where she can accept the help yet, you know, unfortunately. But yeah, she did go through some things, and it's very unfortunate. But then, you know, why it just makes you wonder, like, why, you know, how come she didn't think the way I thought, like, hey, man, I'm never gonna treat my kids like this. Or some people, how come some people can break the cycle and some people can't? It's tough. I don't understand.
You know, and that's that resilience piece, right? And what you do use to cope. I mean, my parents both came from had pretty traumatic experiences, and went through some things, and they're not perfect, but they really did a great job raising us as far as, you know, breaking the cycle of intergenerational traumatic reactions, basically, in so many ways. So
and that's why it jumped out to me too, with David talking about his own, looking inward and saying, man, this isn't right. I need to fix this. That got my attention, because there are so many like your mom that don't do that. They either don't see it, or don't want to see it, or aren't willing to fix it. And you wanting to do all of that is impressive to me.
Yeah, you know, I just remember my main coping mechanism was emotional detachment. So I remember being so tired of my heart beating in my chest and just dealing with this, that I would, you know, first I was like, do I even care about my mom anymore? And I would imagine her dying and how I would feel. And for a while, I would still cry when I imagined that. And I was like, okay, I'm okay. I'm not, this isn't affecting me. But then over time, it got to where I wasn't affected by that thought, you know? And so basically I pretty much emotionally detached from her. I didn't care about her. I had no feelings towards her. And that was my way, because it was either that or me dying, one or the other. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going out like that. So the only way to survive is to just emotionally detach myself from her, so nothing she does affects me anymore emotionally. And so after that, she could have hit me and oh, well, whatever. Like, I had no emotional feeling towards that. So I guess, and that bothered me throughout my life, because I realized in other relationships, I would, as soon as something would trigger me, I would, boom, emotionally detach. And I do not want to be like that. I mean, especially towards people I really care about, you know what I mean? So, so I just, as I got older, I was like, I want to be who I want to be. You know, my worst fear is to die not being a person that I should have been, you know? So, and I just ended at that.
And I think that's the exciting thing, is that there's so many opportunities and
right.
available these days for people to heal and to rebound. We can talk about that later.
I'm impressed by all that, David. Thank you, man. You're a strong individual. You're a strong individual. I'm proud of you, dude. Proud to call you my friend.
Likewise. Thank you.
So, Tracy, Miss Tracy, we're going to bring you in now. Because I'm guessing it's going to come out in some way, shape, or form. I will share with everybody. Tracy and I have known each other for probably over 10 years. We've had a good friendship during all that time. Earlier in it, our friendship turned into a relationship. Like from 2012 to 2015, right in that range. We had a close, intimate relationship. Obviously, it didn't work out the long term, but we've remained close since then. So Tracy's story for me personally, like I was with her while she was going through therapy. So like so much of what she experienced, I was there while she experienced it. And it was really heavy for me. And knowing that I was going to be doing this with David, I asked you, Tracy, to come on. If you're willing to come on and be part of this, and you were, and I appreciate it. And I'll let you jump in and share what you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to be like Dave. I hope this definitely helps somebody, because hiding things does not fix anything. And I'm so tired of other generations of people saying, oh, shh, the dirty secret of our family, keep it hid, so no, it's not, so so mine kind of starts also in childhood. I came from a family that was divorced. I moved in with my mom. And probably pretty much at the age of 8 years old or so, 9 years old, I became like, my mom worked, and then we were going to daycare, and I hated going to daycare. So I talked my mom to let me stay home, and all of a sudden I was raising my brother, and the reason why I'm bringing this up.
At 8 or 9 years old, in case
Yeah.
somebody missed that. I just wanted to point that out.
I mean,
she was
I'm
raising her
not
brother
talking,
when she should have been being raised by somebody else. So.
right. Like I had to do all the housework, like, and it had to be done all the time. Everything had to be vacuumed, dusted, polished. The floors had to be scrubbed, tubs had to be cleaned. And at first I didn't mind doing it, because I was just like, okay, I'm helping my mom. But it started to be that's where I got my OCD from, because, like, for example, it wasn't good enough to help my mom separating clothes or folding towels. The towels had to be color coordinated. They had to be folded a certain way. They had to be put in the closet in a perfect fashion. If they weren't, they were thrown on the floor, and I was told to do it again, on top of having to do my homework. And my parents, they got divorced, and there's 6 kids in our family, and we are kind of become pawns in their game of getting divorced. So, like, my dad back then we didn't have caller ID, and a lot of people didn't have answering machines then. So I'd answer the phone, and I'd talk to my dad. My dad'd be like, I want to talk to your mom. I'm like, Mom, Dad's on the phone. Tell him he's an effing asshole. I don't want to talk to him. I'm like, Dad. And I'd have to repeat it. Then my dad would say, well, tell your mom she's a C. And I'm like, all right, and then finally I just put the phone down. I'm like, I'm 8, 9 years old. I'm not doing that. I tell my mom, like, I'm in 5th grade. I don't have to do this. You get on the phone and talk to him. And like things like that would happen, or we wouldn't have food in the house because of, she would spend the money on child support for other things. So we were funding for ourselves. Like, I remember, like, running hot water over spaghetti to see if I can soften it so my brother and I can eat it, or eating the ice cream cones. So we didn't have really good, without the ice cream, just the cone. That is the boringest thing to eat.
Almost like a jam sandwich. You know what a jam sandwich is? You just take
just the jam.
No,
no peanut butter.
You just take 2 slices of bread and jam them together.
I actually did. I used to eat bread by itself, just because. Yeah. And she'd go shopping once a month and say, and she'd buy like a thing of lunch meat and say, this has to last the whole month. Okay, that doesn't even make sense. But so our eating habits started to get messed up. So then as I started to get older, you're a young kid, you don't really think about things. But when you become a teenager, you start wanting to know if you're, you know, if you're pretty enough, if you're, you know, physically attractive or whatever. And so, of course, I had a sister who, you know, everybody thought was the perfect Barbie doll type. And I asked my mom, like, Mom, you think I'm pretty like her? Oh, yeah, you're pretty in your own way, you know? And so I'm like, okay, so my mom would tell me, you're not, you know, you're not thin enough. You're too heavy. You know, you need to lose weight. I'm like, well, how do I lose weight if you don't think I'm thin enough? Well, she wouldn't tell me. She wouldn't show me how to do it. So I didn't know what to do. So at 14 years old, I was going to the store and buying diet pills. And, you know, my sister and I had started taking diet pills. And, you know, you're supposed to eat with diet pills. But I was like, you know how much more weight I'd lose if I start not eating? Man, this is going to be great. And then I started starving myself. And eventually, from there, my dad kind of caught on. I was starving myself. So I was like, yeah, but he won't know it if I eat it and then go throw it up. And the point of all this is, so this kind of happened. So I never, like David, never thought I'd be good enough. And I worked out constantly. And it's just like, okay, I'm never going to be pretty enough. I'm never going to be fit enough. I'm never going to be perfect enough. Who the hell's going to date me? And if anybody ever showed interest in me, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't want to date you, you know? And sometimes when I was a teenager, I was like kind of like the crazy one of my group. I always did the crazy thing because I wanted to feel like I was alive, you know? Like we were doing a drag race and we were headed onto the freeway. And I don't know if any of you guys ever saw the show Footloose, where the girl like climbs out the window. Yeah, I was going to do that. I started rolling down my window. I started crawling out my window because I wanted to get onto the other person's car while we're going onto the freeway. And if I ever find out my daughter does that, I'd kill her. But back then, my friend's like, what are you doing? If something happens to you, your dad would kill me, you know? So, but I just wanted to feel alive, you know, feel something.
Right.
So that takes me into my early 20s eventually. So I struggled. I didn't think I had an eating disorder. It was just a way of staying fit and thin, is either starving myself or purging constantly. And so eventually I wind up going out to Colorado for training. And I wind up dating my first serious boyfriend, who went blind, but he was also a drug addict, dealt drugs, and was part of a bike. He was a biker that belonged to a bike gang out there before he lost his sight.
Right.
And so, of course, when you get into a relationship like that, everything is so great and hunky-dory and everybody is so lovey-dovey. And then all of a sudden, like a switch, like things start happening, you know. He doesn't like that people think you're pretty, you know, and he doesn't like that people, you know, are attracted to your personality.
It was bothering him that you were getting attention.
Yeah, for sure. And so like we would fight. And of course my go back to was always when I'd hit my stressor, it would be to purge, right? So purging was my comfort. Right. And so it got bad, obviously. Like he would throw me up against the wall and tell me, well, you know, if I cut, he put a knife up against my face. And sorry.
You're all right. Take your time. It's all right.
And if you don't want to get into gory details, you don't need to.
Right.
This is really important, though.
Okay.
That's all right.
He told me to cut my face. So people would find me attractive.
Wow.
And so to leave him got really ugly too. And I did leave him, obviously, but it got to the point where like I started feeling numb like David did. Like, what is the point of all this?
Mhm.
Is anything ever going to get any better?
Yeah.
I have to imagine, I'm going to give you a second, Trace. I have to imagine, Michelle, like for somebody, like it's got to be so hard for somebody to process like all these different messages. Like she grew up being told she wasn't pretty enough, and then she gets in a relationship and now she's too pretty and she's being
Yeah.
abused over it.
Right.
Like that, I can't imagine what it would take to process like all these different messages and make sense of it.
Right. And you're getting all these messages and all these physical traumas are happening, and your body is just living in a state of arousal. And we weren't made to stay in that sense of arousal all the time. It wears our bodies down, and that's one of the things they found with the ACEs studies, is that it links trauma to long-term health issues, to diabetes and cancer, and I mean, there is a direct link from high, constant stress and high stress situations to long-term health issues. And people are like, well, why are they so prevalent? Well, we're all experiencing a lot of stuff, and the sense of betrayal, the abuse of power, the confusion, the loss. That's all trauma, and it is, but it's absolutely possible, as Tracy and David have their examples of healing. So
Yeah.
So while I was with him, I started feeling like there was no point. Like, what's the point of me living? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't understand what it was supposed to be about.
You didn't feel a lot of hope.
No. And actually, I finally decided I was going to leave him on 9/11 when I was waiting to hear what happened to Flight 93. And I was looking out the window and looking at how blue the sky was. I'm like, the world is beautiful. What am I doing here with this person who's treating me like this? Like,
wow.
But I didn't know how to leave. I was scared, because like I'd go to college and then I'd go to school, I'd work, and I'd always have to have a change of clothes in my bag and $20 because I never knew when I was getting thrown out of the apartment, and so.
And you were still pretty young. Weren't you only like 22,
I was
20?
I was 22 when I finally left him.
Okay.
But yeah, I was, and you think you feel old. Like, I don't know about David, but there are days like I felt so old and so tired.
Yeah.
And so finally one day I was, the final point of the head of all that coming to a head and the ending was I was getting ready to do a paper. Somebody called me to ask me to do a leadership seminar with them. I said, hey, my boyfriend's sleeping. Let me go in the other room and talk to him. And, he comes out, and it got to be he accused me of wanting to sleep with the person that was on the phone. And then we started fighting, and I was packing my bag, and I'm like, I'll be back in a few days. I don't have time for this nonsense. I have this paper that needs to be due. I got to go to work. Da, 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 da. He's like, you're not leaving. I'm like, yeah, I got to go. I'll be back when you straighten up. I'm tired of this. And so he actually, he threw me on the bed, and he crisscrossed his hands over my face and told me, you're never leaving me. And I couldn't breathe because he was pushing me down into the bed. And I just remember seeing his face over mine. I'm like, God, you're ugly. And I think it was just because of how horrible of a person he was. And then I remember, because I was still able to see, it started like everything around the corners of my eyes started going dark. And I'm like, okay, it's over. I'm going to die now. I'm happy with this. Like, I'm relieved. All this is over. No more pain, right? And then something's like, oh no, you're not ready to go yet. You need to fight. You want to get out of here. And all of a sudden, like, as my body started to relax, like my sight, like it seemed like it like just became like iron focused, you know what I mean? Like it was just very laser focused. He had a silver chain on, and I started to twist it and it broke. And that's when he got mad at me for breaking his chain. Not that he was like suffocating me, but he, you know, he called me a few names and he went to go punch me and I rolled off the bed. And that's when I ran, you know, and that's when I was like, wow, you do want to live, you know what I mean? And so, you know, but I still purged, right? So I did everything people told me I couldn't do. Like I was going through the business enterprise program at the time, and I left Colorado because of him. And I moved back in, weirdly enough, I moved back in with my mom to get away from him. And I told her I had to go back. And she goes, you can't go back there. He's gonna, you know, Dennis is, or, you know, he's there. He's gonna, what if he talks you back into it? I'm like, look, I left because I was scared, but I gotta go back. Like, I am not leaving something because somebody scared me. I refuse to be somebody's victim. And so I'm like, I'm going back there. I'm gonna finish. And I did, and I wound up doing, I stayed out in Colorado until I was like, I did everything I said I was going to do out here. I'm ready to go home. And I moved back home to Ohio, and started my BEP out there. And I met Neil, and I started talking to him. He helped me. You know, I started talking to him. I think we started talking because my dad had cancer, so did his dad. I think that's originally how we really started talking a lot.
That's when we started getting closer, yeah. Because we had like a common thing we were going through, yeah.
Yeah, and he was really, really helpful with, you know, being there, being supportive and all that. And then once all that kind of went away, we still kept talking, and I was going to the gym a lot, and I'd come home and be like, yeah, I just went to the gym. I do 6 spin classes a week, and I was doing like weightlifting, and I was doing like, you know, cardio at home on top of the spin classes. And he's like, Tracy, what are you going to eat tonight? I'm like, oh no, I think I'm going to have a peppermint patty. Do you remember me telling you that?
Like, I mean, not that
like,
not that specifically, but I remember
I barely ate.
Not only the eating stuff, but like you weren't just working out, but you would you might not work out for like a week, and then you'd go to like 3 spin classes in one day. You know, it's like I was no expert, but I didn't see that as being healthy.
Yeah, like because I'd work. Yeah, I mean, I worked out, but then like work would get in the way, and then I would be like, I'll get to the gym next week. And eventually I was working out so much, my dietitian told me that I was working out harder and more than some of the football players that she dealt with, you know, at OSU. So anyway, Neil sat me down, like we were talking one day on the phone. He goes, look, that's when we were kind of charged to each other. He goes, look, I don't think I need to be your boyfriend. I think I need to be your friend. He goes, you know, I think, because, you know, he's heard a lot of stuff that's happened in my family. He's like, Tracy, I think you have an eating disorder. I'm like, I don't have an eating disorder. He's like, Tracy, you throwing up 3 to 6 times a day when you're stressed out is not normal. He goes, most normal people don't think to go throw up, Tracy.
A good friend tells you the truth.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to hear it.
I did not want to hear it, by the way.
If I could, I'd like to jump in, just because for me it played out a little bit different. Like we had decided to get involved with a relationship, and we were on different coasts, so we were a few months away from. We had plans on. I guess I was going out to Ohio, and while I had known. Like just from us getting close and talking, I had known Tracy had done some purging like when she was a teenager. And then as she shared a little bit more, I realized that she did some purging in her 20s. And then, you know,
My dad died, and then it like came like back really bad. I couldn't
But
control
at
it.
this point in time, Tracy's in her early 30s, and I'm realizing she's still doing this. And that's when it just hit me. It's like, look, I'll come out there, but I'm not coming out there to start a relationship. I'll come out there to help you get some help, because I didn't know a lot about. I knew she had an eating disorder. I didn't think she did. I knew she had an eating disorder, and I didn't know a lot. I didn't know a percentage of what I learned after she got into treatment. I just knew that I knew one woman with an eating disorder, and she was dead by the time she was 30 from organ failure. And that scared the crap out of me. And that's when I just felt like there's only one message I could send Tracy. And that's that she needed help, and I wanted her to get it.
Yeah.
And we went back and forth for a little bit about me going. He goes, all right, what if you go to your doctor and don't lie to her and tell her what you're doing? I'm like, all right. I said, but if she tells me I don't have an eating disorder, can we just drop this whole thing? And he said, yeah. So, oh my gosh, I went to the doctor, and what did she tell me? She said, you have bulimia with characteristics of anorexia. And so I had to start treatment. She got me on an anxiety medicine, and I had to find a therapist. And I had some good friends who worked for the city for working at like parks and recreation, and they knew a lot of people, and they got me to like a phenomenal place. But the hard thing is like, you gotta wait 9 months, 6 to 9 months for, to get your application gets turned in, 6 to 9 months for somebody to actually get back to you. And I waited and waited and waited. And finally I heard, and I went to therapy, and like, it just started a Pandora's box of everything. Like, the first few times I went, it was emotional and I was exhausted. I'd call Neil and I'm like, I'm so tired. Like, I can't even focus. I'm so exhausted, and I'd go to sleep early from it. And then I started having nightmares. Like, the reason why I told you about Dennis is because like I'd have nightmares of him holding a knife up to my face and actually cutting my face, but the cut never came, like in real life. Or I would have dreams of him suffocating me, and I'd wake up and I'd be gasping for breath. Or like my mom, she dated a lot of crazy guys. So like the one guy actually told me, he took my mom on a date, and he showed me how to load and aim this gun. And I come to find out later, it was like a machine gun, and he was in trouble with the FBI. And I didn't know, I found that out later as I started talking more about therapy, and like some of the guys she had us around, and like all this stuff just started exploding. Like it just like I went in for an eating disorder, and then come to find out my eating disorder was linked to every traumatic experience I ever had in my whole life. Like it was just, when I was a kid, I saw my dad choke my brother when he was turning blue. My mom had to jump on him to stop it. And like, it was just like every single thing we started talking about, like it was just coming out in my dreams. And there for a while, I couldn't sleep because I was just having so many bad dreams of everything. And there are times I really wanted to quit therapy, but she told me it was going to sometimes it gets worse before it gets better, because you're unlocking the doors to all, and really you think you have it all under control because you're forgetting. And it's like, oh, no. It is a dam that is going to burst. You just don't know when it's going to burst. And it always happens in the most inconvenient times in your life. And, that's where she started giving me tools in my toolbox. She's like, think about you making a toolkit. And we worked on, changing your mind. Like every time you have like a negative thought or one of these bad images pops into your head, you have to think of a positive thought. And sometimes you got to do it, 30, 40, 50 times in a day, but eventually that negative thought will start to go away, and that was just like one of the things that we learned in our toolbox, and breathing, and just other things that we learned in therapy. And I was always told that therapy, when my mom found out I was going to therapy, she's like, you don't need therapy. You just need to learn how to deal with stuff and move on. I'm like, it does not work that way. And you can obviously tell by the way our family is that it did not work that way.
Yeah,
Right. How's that working for you?
Yeah, I mean, not that I want to spend time talking about her mom, because that's its own show. But when Tracy just said that, like what her mom said, it's like, yeah, how's that worked out for you, Mom?
Yeah.
all her trying to bury everything has just made things worse for her.
Worse. Yeah. And so I've learned that therapy is not for the weak. Therapy is made for the most strongest of strong. When, you know, I always think of like strong people, and so I read obsessively about, you know, like the SEALs and their training. Well, let me tell you what, therapy is just like that. Therapy is like for the strongest of the strong, because let me tell you what, it is not easy to look at everything you've gone through when you were helpless and couldn't fend for yourself, and you shouldn't have had to at those ages. And you did the best you could, and you know, you coped the best you could, but you didn't do such a good job. You were putting band-aids on things that needed really not to be band-aid up, you know. Band-aids don't fix things.
It goes back to what David had said so well. Like you're working your brain out with therapy, you know.
Yes.
And that's why it's called mental health. You know, I mean, going to a gym is about physical health, and going to a therapist is about mental health.
And they also give you, they had me on, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. They even gave me some medicine. Okay. I'm terrified of medication. And because, you know, my parents also taught me medicine is for the weak. I mean, growing up, we weren't supposed to cry. Crying was for the weak, you know? And it's just like,
before she got into therapy, I couldn't even talk Tracy into taking aspirin when she had a headache. I mean, she never wanted to take anything. So when a therapist is now saying, well, I think you need to be prescribed to this, and you'll probably be on it the rest of your life. It's like that was its own battle in a lot of ways, I remember.
Yeah, my therapist really did. She fought me hard. She really did. She fought me hard. And eventually I broke down and took it, and it made me feel a lot better. And I'm just like, medicine is not for the, you know, I mean, being used in the right ways, it's just another, she's like, it's just another tool in your toolbox to make you a healthier person and to be a better person. And the thing is once you start getting educated about like your unhealthy ways, like you can't go back to your unhealthy ways. Because if you think, you know, I started getting help, you know, in my 30s, like 32, I'm 41 now. I went to therapy, and I actually am going back for some other stuff that's going on. But I went to therapy for my eating disorder for about 5 or 6 years. And like, I cannot go, like when I struggle, the first thing I want to do is the thought of purge comes into my mind. And then so does the heart failure, so does the cancer, so does, I have a 3-year-old daughter that will be without a mother if I don't control myself, you know? So ignorance is definitely bliss, but it hurts you in the long run too. And you can't close the door once you learned all the horrible things that your unhealthy things are doing to you and the people who are your support team that actually care about you. And you don't want to do that to people. So you gotta learn those healthy ways.
The thing about denial is, like, a key about denial is once you realize what you're in denial about, you no longer can go in, you can't go back to being in denial about it. You know what I mean? There's no, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I wanted to, because you were, you know, this goes back to you talking about therapy not being for the weak, where I want to give you some credit that really emphasizes that therapy is not for the weak. Because again, I was there while Tracy was going through this from the beginning, and I had to feel guilty at times because I pushed her so hard to get into this. For me, it wasn't simple. I don't want to make it sound simple, but I guess I had a simple look at it. Like, she has an eating disorder. she's open to getting help, and she'll go to a therapist, and that'll be helpful. I had no idea how many layers to that onion that were going to be pulled off, that she had to fight through. And I remember, because like, there were things outside of the therapy she had to deal with for the eating disorder. She had to go see a dentist because purging's so bad for your teeth. She had to go get her stomach scoped like twice in 6 months, because purging can cause stomach cancer and problems to your esophagus. And so she's dealing with all this medical stuff on top of the therapy. But and you've already mentioned some of this, Tracy, but like, you didn't know you had OCD until after that. So, you know, here again, I encourage Tracy to go see a therapist, thinking she's just going to be dealing with this eating disorder. And like, one day she comes home and calls me. She's like, guess what? I got OCD. And then, like, you know, another time she's got to go deal with this, and she's got to go get her stomach scoped. And then after like 6 months of all of this, you know, learning one new thing after another about, you know, things that she's dealing with, then they tell her she's got PTSD on top of everything. It's like, she got hit with so many things, but she stuck with it. She stayed in it.
Yes, and people do, and it's hard. It's ugly. It's like going through chemotherapy, big time, right? It's a season of dealing with it, because, and again, I want to point out that this stuff didn't just come up. It was there. She
Right.
just was coping with it unhealthfully, and she probably would be dead if it hadn't been for your challenge to her, and all her hard work. And it's somehow, with all her resources, she was able to be in a safe place, and had connection with people that supported her, and learned the tools to regulate herself, so that she could eventually deal with the eating disorder and the PTSD that was underlying everything. When I work with a lot of addiction. The correlation between mental health and addiction is like 90%, literally. And so I like to tell people, you know, we're going to deal with addiction, but it's about what's under the addiction, right? With what's under it, what's under the eating disorder, you know, and it was PTSD.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is inappropriate what I'm about to say, but something so I liked my therapist because she was very, you know, supportive of me, but, you know, she also was the type who, if I was like, you know, trying to hide from something, she'd be like, you know, knock your shit off.
Right.
You know,
right.
I mean, I need people like that. I don't need somebody to coddle me. I don't like being coddled like that.
Yeah.
But I went in there one day on a particular day, and I was just like, this is just like, it was just poor. It was almost like a pity party for me one day. I don't know what was going on, but I was just like, you know, it's not fair this, and it's not fair that. And she just like looked at me. She goes, look, you may not have created your shit, but you need to fix your shit.
Exactly.
You're the only person who can fix what other people did to you. So if you want to be a victim and lose and let them have that control in your life for the rest of your life, and everything that you ever do and anybody you ever meet for the rest of your life, then go ahead and wallow in your self-pity. But if you don't want to, then fight for what's yours, and that's your life. And I told Neil, I'm like, I refuse to be somebody's victim. I don't care what they did to me. Yeah, they did it, and they set me back a little bit, but don't let somebody take what's yours, and what's yours is your life, and it doesn't matter, you know, it's yours. So don't let somebody else have what belongs to you, and that's your life, and you can live it any way you want.
Right.
So
absolutely. And that's
heavy.
That's why the people who deal with their shit are the bravest people I know. That's why I go to work every day. It's hard, but it's awesome to be, and so humbling. You know, it's awesome to be around so many people that face their stuff. Granted, there's people who don't, you know, or they're not ready to, and I can respect that. But it's
Right.
There comes a point where, you know, you're an adult now. You can deal with it. I mean, and the kids that do it, it's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, I agree.
I
They're amazing.
can imagine. No, but it comes back to that's the point of why we're here today, doing this together. I mean, Tracy and David both. You guys show me a lot of bravery in what you faced and how you deal with it, and just as importantly, your willingness to share, to help somebody else.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Tracy, man, you're a superhero, a real one. You know?
I thought that about you, and I heard your story. I was like, mine doesn't sound as bad as his.
No, and see, that's the thing. You know, that's the crazy thing about trauma is that it doesn't matter. The act doesn't matter. It's the emotions that it draws. You know.
Yeah, it's not the events. I mean, yes, they matter.
The events matter, but the feelings that we had because of those events, somebody could have from the minimalist thing, you know, just being too scared and they weren't ready for it or something, you know. I mean, it's all bad, you know. So it's all bad. There's no worse. I mean, I've you know, Ethan Johnson and Colorado team. I heard his story and I was like, holy crap! Like, you know, my story is cake compared to his, you know. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah. So, but then I was thinking, I was like, well, it's all, you know, it's trauma, you know. That's like y'all said earlier, it doesn't hide, it doesn't pick who it wants to mess with. The the thing that y'all brought up about nightmares, I just had, you know, I'm always trying. Right now, I've only been in therapy since February, so I'm still learning how to connect the dots, you know.
Sure.
And so when y'all brought up about the nightmares, you know, there was times when my mother came home just trashing. I don't know if she forgot I was her son or didn't know who I was. I don't know. But she would try to sleep with me and I would be like underneath with my arms on my side, my legs like paralyzed. And she's on top of me just kissing my neck and stuff. And you know, and I remember that feeling of being paralyzed and numb. And I specifically remember the weight of her body on mine. And so I started having these dreams where I felt like my arms on my side and my legs are together and there's something suffocating my entire body. And I would immediately start praying, and then it would just kind of lift itself off me. And I'm like, what in the world? So, you know, it's just funny how I never thought about the whole, I knew, you know, you have flashbacks and stuff like that. But I haven't really dreamt anything in years except for that, you know, but that was once in a while, you know. So it's just crazy how this is all helping connect things, and I pray that it helps somebody else who hears this connect things, because once you connect things, you feel more confident at attacking it, you know. And so yeah, I just, you know, your story is amazing, and you're a real true life superhero in my book.
You both are.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. Can I add just two more things to what he's saying?
Yeah, of course.
Two things are, I still love my mom, but I don't have to like her. I don't have to like her, and I don't have to have her negative stuff in my life. And her negative stuff doesn't help me. So, you know, over the last couple of years, I've had to cut my mom out of my life. And it's painful. I don't want anything happening to her. I pray she's okay. But she's already taken my childhood. She's not going to take my adult life, is the first thing. And the second thing I want to put out there, maybe who's ever listening, your stuff may not be like mine or David's, or is his name Ethan? I don't want to say his name wrong. He was amazing. The one you had on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if it hurts you, then it's important for you to get it taken care of.
Absolutely.
So what affects me may not affect somebody else, and what affects somebody else may not, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But if it hurts you in some way and you're coping with some type of unhealthy thing, and deep down inside you know that you're hurting yourself, then it's bad. And it's something that should not be just hidden, and it's not weak to go get help for it. That's my biggest thing is,
Mhm.
I just want people to know that
There's options. There's
Yes.
options. There's options.
nothing is too small to get help for.
Right.
Right.
And I wanted to bring up that word normal, because we hear that a lot. That's not normal. That's not normal. So for years, I'm like, I'm not normal because I'm thinking crazy stuff, right? But the reality is, for what we went through, we and Tracy, whoever else went through trauma, for what you went through, whatever's happening in your head, it is normal for you.
Right.
You know? The recognition is, you got to recognize that what you're doing to cope with it isn't healthy. That's quote unquote not normal part.
No.
It's normal, but it's for you, but it's not healthy. And the correlation between, like you said, PTSD and health. I got diagnosed in 2017 with and just remember my story where I was always on hyper alert. I got diagnosed in 2017 with a Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism.
Mm.
And what that is that your thyroid controls your metabolism, how fast or how slow it is. Well, my body, for some reason, just started attacking my thyroid, autoimmune, and it elevated, like it kept me on high alert. My cells were on high alert at the molecular level, and I had no control over it anymore because I'm convinced that it has to do with that. My childhood being on high alert all the time,
Yep. Yeah.
it just never turned off. And now if I don't take medicine, it'll kill me. So it's just crazy. It's crazy. And I pray that somebody wakes up after hearing this and says, I'm ready to fight. I'm going to fight back. And this isn't going to win. Because you're already probably going to have to go through some difficult things if you haven't already regarding health. It's almost inevitable that if you had childhood trauma, you're probably going to end up with a chronic illness. Okay. And I'm not saying you're gonna, like, 100% sure, but you're more than likely, so what you got to do now is go to therapy, learn how to fight back, so that you can learn how to take care of yourself. Because my thing was abusing myself, not cutting or anything like that, but drugs, smoking cigarettes, eating unhealthy, because that's what kept my emotions stable in my head, and that's all I cared about.
That was all part of your coping that
Right.
you taught yourself.
Right. So, and when I said I cared about other people more than myself, I believed it. I mean, I meant it. I'm sorry, I meant it. Literally.
Right.
So, but now that I'm going through therapy, you learn how to really love yourself. For like real love. You learn how to give real love, and you learn how to receive real love, and you learn how to love yourself genuinely. And when you start doing that, you start appreciating, well, I'm going to eat healthy because I care about my body. I want to treat myself with respect. You want to treat yourself better than what you have been.
Along those lines, if I could, Tracy, when Tracy and I were going back and forth getting ready for this show, something she said to me along those same lines, that I think it says what you're saying is, she's like, when she was talking to me personally about like therapy not being for the weak, she's like, not only does therapy force you to look at everything inside you that is bad, it also makes you look at yourself and recognize the good also.
Yeah, and looking at the good is almost more painful than looking at the bad. It's so easy to believe the bad. It's harder to believe the good stuff.
Yeah.
That's interesting. A couple times, I think it was David who no, it was Tracy maybe. Anyway, you're talking about battling the negative thoughts with the good. That is actually, we know from brain scans that for every negative, I believe it's for every negative belief or thought that comes in, it takes like 3 positive thoughts to counteract it, like on a cellular level. They've got brain scans showing, and I'm not going to get it all into the technical stuff, but so, you know, that's one of the reasons, like, the cognitive behavioral part of that is so difficult. It's a battle, but it literally changes the you know, structure of your brain, and it can be done. It can be done, and the human body, the human spirit. I mean, hearing your stories and about your guys' recovery, it always amazes me the how much people overcome and how resilient the human spirit is. And it always impresses me too. You start treating your body correctly, it heals itself. You know, maybe you're going to be at higher risk for some diseases, but man, if you start now, you can really make a lot of progress in counteracting the diseases that may come up. So healing is possible. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and I know Tracy can attest to this, but like she said earlier, it's very difficult when you start. And the thing with my therapist was like, my therapist was like, we're not going to talk about the details. We're going to talk about, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, but we're going to talk about the associations that were developed because of this, and between emotions and thoughts, and how I created these negative associations between alcohol and females, or alcohol and whatever, or the world, because you have a twisted kind of a view of everything around you because of what you went through. So when you first start breaking that down, when you break it down, you're kind of working on your foundation. If you're talking about, we're kind of bringing the fitness out of it, you're building your foundation. But you have to clear the closet. You got to clear the clutter out in your head. And that's what we did first. I just kind of said everything that was in my head, and then we started breaking everything down, what it meant and where it came from, and started connecting the dots. And like Tracy said earlier, when her therapist holds her account, my therapist would do the same thing. She'd be like, "Well, I'm going to call you out on that,
Uh-huh.
all right, cool. All right. Okay. So tell me, instead of this, what is this? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
And I needed that too. And,
Yeah, they don't let you hide. There's nowhere to hide in a therapist office.
A good therapist.
There's nowhere to hide. Even if you're virtual and you're doing your thing from your home, like I've been, that's how I've been for the past few months. You can't hide, and I appreciate that so much from them, my therapist. And it's funny that she's a female, right? Most people be like, maybe he probably should have a male therapist, given what I went through. But my love for women never died. It was just a whole trusting thing, and if they're gonna cause my emotional upset or whatever. And she was so cool about it. She was like, she was so gentle. And when she called me out, she was tough and gentle at the same time. So over time, I've relearned that, God, you could just trust not only just females, but you could trust humans again. Because I was so critical of people that I was like, wow, what in the world? I'm not even allowing people to be human around me. I'm not even allowing people to make mistakes around me. As soon as something they did, get out, or cut you off. That's, to me, that's ridiculous. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You can also start seeing people when you go to therapy and you're actually really learning from your therapy. You could see people better because you're already using your tools in your toolbox. Like, stay away from that person. Right. I can tell you right off the bat when somebody's talking to me who's being abused, even if they don't have a mark on their body, or somebody has eating disorder. If I talk to them long enough, I find out they've had something like that happen to them, or they are having something like that happening to them, because your tools are teaching you to be alert to, all of that around you. You can't shut that stuff off anymore. And you don't want to, because you don't want those bad people in your life or those bad things in your life.
if the trauma did anything positive for me, it was I really relied on my intuition. And on the flip side, it made me really judgmental. You know, like if you're too loud of a person, then I'm gonna keep my distance from you, because I associated loudness with trauma. You know, I had all these crappy associations I had to learn, and my therapist had to point these out to me and help me kind of learn where they came from and you know how unhealthy they are. But yeah, so yeah, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just
No, you're good. I was going to ask Michelle to jump in here because when David had mentioned his, like, you know, maybe he shouldn't have a female therapist or whatever, I thought that might be a good time for you to jump in. I know you wanted to talk about people choosing their therapist. We even talked about like specifically like blind individuals being worried about finding therapists that understood blindness or whatever. Could you dive into all that and talk about that?
So, like any profession, I would like to point out that there's always a few bad apples in any group, right? But there's also, since therapy is so much about relationship, therapeutic rapport, it's very important to get with somebody that that has a healthy connection. I tell people all the time, interview your therapist. When I get a new client, interview me, talk to me, you know. I want to make sure that you know, I can answer your questions. Obviously the big things, like make sure they're licensed and in good standing, but you know, what have they done? How much continuing education have they had? What, you know, they say they're specialized in trauma. When was the last time they had a class in up-to-date research methods and that kind of thing? You know, just trying to find out about them on a professional level. I have somewhere a list of 10 questions to interview and ask a therapist when you call them to get an appointment to see if they're a good fit. However, saying that, obviously you want somebody that's going to specialize in your area, you know, especially like Tracy was saying, you know, eating disorders. Eating disorders is a really specific area of expertise, right? You do want somebody who specializes in your area. However, we're talking about, you know, cultural things, like David was mentioning, hey, my therapist is a female, yet all this started with a bad relationship and a lot of abuse from a female. However, when, you know, him and his therapist have been able to say, hey, you know, that's we recognize that, and yet it's not going to be an issue because she has the tools, to teach him to deal with that. And so I know you mentioned, you know, I have people all the time ask me, oh, do you do therapy with blind people? Well, maybe, if they're a good fit, if what they're doing mentally is you know, I mean, somebody goes blind, they might be, it might trigger past stuff. It might trigger something. Maybe it was an accident they went blind from. Maybe it was years of medical issues. You know, you don't have to have, it's like you don't have to have somebody who is blind to understand the things that are behind the mental health issues that might be pointing that out. You want somebody that understands that is a factor, right? As far as it relates to you and your problem. I
would think though it's more important that they can deal with the problem.
Yeah.
Like you know, the problem that you're in therapy for.
Right, exactly. And maybe it's triggered like, okay, I'm going blind and I'm having a hard time adjusting to it. Okay, so you want somebody that's really good with adjustment issues, right?
Yeah.
And so, things like that. It's
Uh,
more about the treatment you get provided, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, I didn't have this thought the other day, but I just had it while we were talking. You know that anybody that's familiar with the blind community should be familiar with the fact that over 70% of the blind community is unemployed.
Right.
And I know that I think it, and I've experienced it, and I've heard plenty of other blind people talk about, like, a big part of that element. A big part of that element is that sighted people are looking at us and saying, I don't think you could do this job. And
Right.
in a way, what we're talking about here, if a blind person were to say to a sighted therapist, like, well, you're not blind, so you can't help me, that's like a reverse of that.
Exactly.
I don't know, I hope I'm not comparing apples to oranges, but
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
a
it's
way
similar. It's absolutely similar, I think.
it's kind of the same concept or whatever.
Right. And so you really want to find treatment that's specific to, uh, kind of the area. I mean, definitely, if you're showing signs of PTSD, you want somebody who's going to be really experienced in PTSD. There's several different modalities of how to treat trauma these days. One of them being CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It sounds like David's really working strongly with a cognitive behavioral therapist, and
Yes, yes.
the difference is that you're going to be a trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapist, right? There's other therapies, such as desensitization, exposure therapy. There's reprocessing therapies such as EMDR. There is somatic therapies that might include anything physical, mindfulness, even acupuncture, different things like that. Most trauma therapists use a combination of different things because people are individuals, and we want to customize it, right? But some of them really focus in on a particular specialty. Like, for instance, I am trained and a huge proponent of EMDR, and I love doing it.
Could you say what that is? I have no idea what EMDR
is. Sure, I'll just say that. But not everybody is appropriate for EMDR, right? And I'm certainly not going to do it until they're ready. And I'm going to use cognitive behavioral therapy and somatic therapy to get ready to do EMDR. So, and I'll explain it. I'll try to explain it. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Now, even the founder wanted to change the name, but by the time she wanted to change the name, they wouldn't let her. So what we know, like I said earlier, is that trauma is stored in the middle of your brain, if it's not processed correctly, if it's not dealt with, right? So it's in the part of the brain that holds it's the fight, flight, freeze. And I heard David and Tracy explain in their stories how much they used, that they used freezing, numbing out, fighting, running away, or getting aggressive, or fleeing, to cope. So when we work in therapy, it's not about making you forget what happened to you. We can't take that away.
Yeah.
It's about processing things so that it moves to the frontal lobe of your brain, so that it's not so disturbing, so it doesn't have control over your body and your reactions, and you can reframe your thoughts so that you're living a good quality life. So nobody knows why yet, as far as I know. But for some, REM sleep, right? You're familiar with REM sleep and how you're such in that deep sleep and your eyes go back and forth. That's like your brain defragging, like a computer defrags. And you're processing, your brain is sorting through what's happened in your day, and it's moving things to prioritize them in your brain. And so you can be rejuvenated and rested and get up and go again. So we know that people who experience trauma, most often, they don't have enough rest, sleep, things like that to help their bodies cope. So EMDR is an 8-phase protocol, and in short, what it does is you start by prepping people with teaching them coping skills, teaching them how to feel good is a big part of it, or be able to be in the moment and experience things, and use self-soothing techniques to healthy self-soothing techniques to be able to care for themselves. The reprocessing part comes with you use a combination of beliefs, thoughts, and body sensations, in addition to bilateral stimulation. So, I talked about REM sleep and your eyes moving back and forth. That's the bilateral stimulation part of it. So we don't know why, but if the eye movement part is when you track the therapist's finger back and forth while they're they're going back and forth between their thoughts, their beliefs, and their body sensations to reprocess experiences. But most people don't use eye movement anymore. I think I've heard anywhere from 10 to 30% of cases are using eye movement. They can use tapping on either side of your legs, just tapping back and forth. Or you hold these little vibrating buzzers in your hands, they vibrate back and forth. Or you can use sound, beeping or music back and forth in your ears like they would on a hearing test. So it's a therapy where you don't have to sit and talk about a lot of the gory details. You're gonna target beliefs, images, things that are disturbing that are coupled with negative beliefs. So you're turning that I'm not worthy into I did the best I could, and then replacing it with a positive cognition of I am capable. And I could go on and on and on, and there's tons of information out there.
Yeah, it sounds like a
can I ask a
big
question?
process. Yeah.
So is there two questions. Number one, is there when as a therapist, when do you know when your client is ready for that next step? Because I feel like I've been doing the cognitive behavioral therapy for a few months, and I'm just curious, is there a time, is there a certain time of therapy they have to meet to move to that next level? When do you know when they're ready to go to that next level?
It's when they are able to use healthy coping skills, healthy self-soothing. Are you able to relax without totally disassociating? Are you able to learn mindfulness techniques? So, to be present in the moment and not get completely agitated. So, you know, some people are ready on a second session, and some people it takes a year. It depends. And this is, again, this is dependent on how much you want to invest, right? And how good, how much you take care of your body. I had a client tell me last week, I'm sick of hearing about exercise and my nutrition and if I'm eating breakfast or not. Well, until you can give your body the tools it needs to fight to recover, I'm not going to, you know, it's all about, I don't want to re-traumatize you. I'm in this for healing, not to scare you to death again. So it's when you can do a lot of good self-care, when you can start reframing things, when you can start learning to relax and be present in the moment, you know, that's what a good therapist is probably going to be looking for. And you definitely want somebody who, if you're looking at EMDR, you want somebody who is very well trained, especially by they have the EMDR International Association, and you want somebody that's accredited by them and doing good. So it's and there's a lot of modalities. There's biofeedback, there's brain spotting. People might, you know, some therapists use a combination of brain spotting and EMDR. But above all, I would say find somebody who's gonna base it on a sense of safety, the therapeutic relationship, teaching you healthy coping skills, and who's gonna be honest and hold you accountable. And you know, sometimes we do work to a certain level. We might do work for 2 years and be like, okay, I'm good. And then 5 years later, something might come up in life and we're like, okay, I need to tune up. Let's go back, right? And you might do therapy a different way because you're ready.
That's where I'm at right now. I'm going back.
Yeah. Good
Therapists
for you.
are impressive. I gotta say this too about therapists. You know, like with regular doctors, they can kind of, there's signs. You know what I mean? I mean, there's signs with when you're having traumatic experiences too. But worst comes to worst, if a doctor can cut you open, they can cut you open, see what's going on, try to fix it. Right? With therapists, man, they have to do all this just by trying to do these exercises to get in your brain, and it's got to be really hard. So you gotta make sure you do a right fit. So
yes,
like
the right fit is very important. Very important. Yes.
So before I, you know, kind of heading towards a wrap up, before I give you all your lives back, do you have anything that you can share on helping people, Michelle, helping folks like head towards therapy or find what they need to do to find somebody?
A lot of people get referred by their doctors. It's always good. If a good therapist is going to say, hey, have you been to the doctor lately? If you haven't, you need to go get checked out, because there's a lot of physical issues that can create mental health issues. Like David was talking about his thyroid. That's one of the major ones. If you have a thyroid issue, it might be causing a lot of disturbance in your mental health. So, you know, a lot of people go to the doctor. You can also reach out to your insurance company and find somebody who's on their approved list. You know, and I would say call at least 3 people. Even if you found the one on the first try, call an interview. There's also a million resources on the internet. There is, if you're looking for a specific therapist, there's search engines like on Psychology Today. There's helppro.com. And you can even, on Help Pro, you can even put in like your insurance company, the type of issue you have. You can put in whether you want cognitive behavioral therapy or EMDR. So that's a good resource. Ask if you have trusted people who've been through this before. Word of mouth is always great. Sometimes not, but it's out there, and
Right.
there's certain websites like the National Association of the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder.
Okay.
There is what is it called? There's a national alliance. I think it's the National Alliance for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder also, that they tend to have good links to advocacy groups that might help people get out of like domestic violence or
Oh, cool.
be experiencing natural disasters, things like
Right.
that. There's SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. There's the Centers for Anxiety Disorders. They also link to there's pages and pages. So there's lots of information out there, and I can send you some, and maybe people can find what they need through that.
All right. That'll work. I'll definitely, whatever you send me, I'll share with the show wherever I post it, and give people an opportunity to look into things. Give people an opportunity to be as brave as David and Tracy have been in dealing with all this stuff. Because I mean, even just coming and talking with everybody today about it, it takes real bravery to face this stuff head on. And I'm inspired by both of you. I appreciate both of you.
Well, and thank you, Neil, for being brave enough to talk about these issues, and advocating for people, and addressing it, because it's real nice for a lot of people in this world to pretend like everything's okay, or on the opposite side of that, to just be like life is going to end if you have experienced trauma. And I think that they've shown us that a good quality of life is possible.
Right. I'm not sure what happened, but we lost David. I at this point, I think maybe we all have. This has been a really. I feel like taking a nap. It's been kind of draining. So, if do you guys have anything to add at this point?
No, I'm good.
No.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and anybody listening that's just considering, just thinking, man, I can relate to so much of this. I wonder if maybe, follow Tracy's lead, follow David's lead, listen to yourself. If you're thinking, I need some help, go try to get one. Listen to Michelle's advice. David's back. Hey, David, we're wrapping it up. Welcome back.
I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah. But follow Michelle's advice. Go see your doctor. Talk to your doctor about what you're experiencing. Call your insurance company. Do some self-insurance. Self-examination or self-exploring. Just figure out what you need. Do what David did. Look at yourself and say, this doesn't feel right. I need to do something about it.
Right. And the biggest thing, for me, PTSD made me anti-person. Like I want to do things by myself, but I've learned that's not the best, or the best way. We need other people, even if we don't want them, we need them. We need people like Neil, who genuinely know how to care for other people. Because at one time I forgot how to do that. So, but the biggest thing I learned is that I need other people to be the best, in order for me to be who I want to be in my life, I need other people.
We weren't put on this earth alone.
Yeah.
Right, and it's so crazy when you learn about photosynthesis and cellular respiration and how we're all connected. You know, the earth gives back, we give back to the earth. You know, it's crazy, and we're all connected, and it's you know, humans make mistakes, but we can also do some amazing things together. So
strength in numbers.
yes, strength in numbers. So if
Strength in
you're out there, and you know, I was wondering, Michelle, real quick, if you can kind of point out some symptoms that people might have that might be connected with PTSD, because some people may not know that.
Oh my gosh. Physical symptoms may include anything from stomach aches, heartbeat issues, fatigue, so many health issues. Can't sleep too much. They sleep too much or too little. Nightmares, flashbacks, jitteriness, wanting to be too alone or can't be alone at all. Basically, you're looking at the extremes, right? Because, like I said, we all experience trauma in some way, shape, or form. It's how we respond to it. Do we recover from it? And so you're looking at extreme physical symptoms, extreme emotional reactions, the impulsivity part of it. Some people really develop, impulsive disorders or compulsive disorders. Yeah, it's, you can Google post-traumatic stress disorder and be like, oh my God, I've got this, right? Yeah. One of the things that's really characterizes post-traumatic stress disorders is flashbacks and nightmares. And it's kind of like, it's a criteria. So you might need 3 symptoms in this category and 2 in that category. But yeah, I don't know. Does that help a little bit, David?
I'm sure that helps that'll help some people out there. I guess for me, it's like, I think, if you've been through trauma before, you kind of know, like, yeah, I've been through some trauma before. And I think that's a huge thing. Like, you may not think it's affecting you, but, it's, for me, the thing I want people to know is this: no, it doesn't hurt to talk to somebody, but talk to a professional who knows how to teach you these new coping skills, because we need new coping skills, right? Healthy ones. And so, and it is scary to start treatment. Trust me, it was scary to come on here, but I learned to use anxiety and fear for my benefit. Instead of letting it paralyze me, I face it head on, and I love doing that now. Sometimes it can be a little dangerous, like, hey, I'm scared to jump off this cliff because I'm blind, but I'm gonna do it anyways, So you gotta pick you gotta pick the right things to do. But always, I love to fight back now, and really, me and Tracy, that's all we've done really is fight back. We just, I guess we got to a point where we're getting kind of weary and tired and from it all, and we just need some new exercises to do, some new tools to use. But fight back, and you'll win, and we want to help you win. So
you'll feel better when you do.
Oh yeah.
You'll actually start to feel better about yourself.
Oh, most definitely.
I think that's the most powerful part, that you guys have been going through this or have gone through this, and know that you're probably going to continue to go through this, and you're still here telling other people they should also. You know what I mean? You're encouraging people to fight the fight that you're fighting. That, to me, says a lot. Says a lot.
Yeah.
Did you guys make it through this all right? Did we do this right?
Couple tears.
Feel all right?
I did. Yeah.
Feel all right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. You guys are both inspirational. Just thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you both. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate you, Michelle. Thank you for taking the time to do this and helping us with this. It's been, David and I have known since like June or July that we wanted to do this, and I wanted help, and you, I knew from our first conversation you were the perfect help, and you've been great, and I appreciate it. I hope I've gained a friend through all this.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
My pleasure. If everybody is good on that, I guess we are going to wrap it up there. Any final words?
Jet life.
Boo. Well, you guys, for those of you that don't know, I always end my show by saying goodnight to, it's actually Seth's Aunt Cindy, but Aunt Cindy's a big fan of the show. I always end the show by saying goodnight to Aunt Cindy. So starting with David and then to Denise, and we'll finish up with Michelle. I'd like all of you to give Aunt Cindy a loving goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Aunt Cindy.